Good evening and welcome you all for today's lecture. I'm Kamala Gunawardhan again, a council member and the chairperson of the Knowledge Sharing Subcommittee of the Civil Engineer Sectional Committee. And I'm here to commence the lecture today. Before I start today's program, I request you all to mute your microphones always, except when if you want to ask for a question, you please mute them. Thank you. You all are now very much familiar about our activities of the Civil Engineer Sectional Committee, and your participation is much appreciated. That itself an appreciation of our work, as well as is a better achievement for you all. Today's webinar is a continuation of a previous lecture, Structural Forms for Tall Buildings. That's the third day, under medium rise building designs and constructions by Fox Jayasinghe. And this is the 9th lecture for the series. So we are starting today's event right now, and I will call our eminent personality, who is always with the comprehensive stuff of knowledge in this area. And that is how he has taken the challenge of giving you the best out of best and about these designs and constructions of this type of buildings. Without further ado, I invite Professor Jayasinghe, Sanjay Jayasinghe, Senior Professor of Civil Engineering at the University of Moratuwa, as well as our Chairman of the Civil Engineering Sectional Committee, to proceed with the lecture. Please enjoy this evening with this important webinar. Thank you. Thank you, everybody. Over to you, Professor.
Thank you, Engineer Kamala. Can you all hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah. And also you can see the PowerPoint presentation. Shear wall structures. Can you see the presentation? Or?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes. You can see it. Right. Now, last time we talked about the concrete frame structures, infill frame structures, and today we talk about shear wall structures. And we all know when we have a lot of floors, we need lifts. The moment you lift, you can easily provide concrete walls. And those can act as shear walls. So the name shear wall is actually not a very correct one, because these walls behave as cantilevers. So basically they behave in cantilever mode, but we call them shear walls. So they are not behaving in shear mode, they are actually behaving in cantilever mode. So they are flexural members, but we call them shear walls. So basically shear walls are very strong because we use concrete, and concrete is a material where by increasing the strength, we can increase the elastic modulus, and in doing so, we can reduce the reflection of shear walls. So you don't select the strength of materials just with guesswork. Always think what you want to do, and whether you have any problem with lateral deformations, whether the accelerations are too much or the deflections are too much, then you can increase the strength of the material that you use. The main material is concrete. The reinforced concrete can be made strong. So if you have small buildings like 10 to 15 story buildings, we call them medium rise buildings, then it is correct to assume that all the lateral loads are carried by shear walls, and frame will not carry any any lateral loads. Because of that, the frame can be designed only to carry the vertical loads. It's very easy. The moment you make this assumption, you can see the shear wall is a cantilever. Cantilever means it's fixed at the ground level and it's behaving as a vertical member, but fixed at the ground level. Or if you make it horizontal, then you will see it's simply a cantilever. And we know cantilevers are statically determinate. So we can straight away decide the amount of dead weight of the self weight of the wall. You can also easily determine the loads transferred by the slabs, supported supporting, supported by the shear walls. So the slabs supported by the shear walls, we can easily decide how much load will be transferred onto the shear wall. Then we have the lateral loads. The more, because we assume that all the lateral loads are taken by the shear walls, we can determine the bending moments. Why? All the cantilevers are statically determinate structures. The moment you know the loads, you can find the bending moments. The moment you have the axial load and the bending moment, we can design the wall. So how do you design the wall? That is the next question. And for that, I'll show you how we do the calculations, and they are pretty straightforward calculations. What we do is we treat column, the shear wall as a column. So if you want to design a column subjected to axial load N, bending moment M, so we calculate MOBH squared. This way NOBH. We have the interaction charts like that. So we have the interaction charts. The moment you know the axial load, bending moment, we have the interaction chart. So what we do is we have a wall which may be 6 meters of length, maybe about 40 meters of height. So we assume that though it's 6 meters of length, it is going to behave as a column. And this is the section 6 meters long. So what we do is we assume that say 0.8 meters at the end is where we are going to provide a concentration of reinforcement. And in a normal column, we have a lot of reinforcement here, and we might need some reinforcement there. Then we have the links. Then you might have links like this. We might also have links like this. So something similar should be done in the wall the moment you assume it as a column. So what we do is 6 meters, let's say 0.25 meters. Moment is axial force will be there, moment will be there. And let's say the load on this is something like 10 kilonewtons per meter. If you assume that the load is 10 kilonewtons per I'll do is I can control it because it's easy for me. So I control the camera, so don't worry. So basically, the bending moment at the center, at the bottom, is WH by H by 2. So that is 10 into 40 into 40 by 2. So the magnitude will be 400 multiplied by 20, 8,000 kilonewton meters. And let's say NOBH is about 12 or 15. And MOBH squared will be 8,000 into 10 to the power 6 divided by 6,000 divided 6,000 squared by 250. So you can see 8,000 is a big moment divided by 250 divided by 6,000 squared. 0.88. So if you look at a column interaction chart, you'll find that 0.88 for MOBH squared is not a big value and it's a very small value. So because of that reason, you might say, no problem. I mean, we can easily consider it as an axially loaded member. So so basically, what we do is I'll share the screen now. Can you see these charts?
No,
Can you see the chart?
no, no, Professor, can't.
Just one moment. Hmm. Can you see now?
Yeah, now possible.
Right. So basically, you can see. I'll just take something. So you can see DOH ratio can be calculated, then something like 15, and we are somewhere here, 0.88. So we have to provide about a 1%. So let's assume that we are providing 1% reinforcement. Now you can see it can be any value, but you can get it from the chart. You have to select the relevant chart. So what we do is we get 1%, 6 meters long, and this 0.25, and I consider 0.8 meters. 100 days over BH is equal to 1%. AS is equal to 6,000 multiplied 250 divided by 100. So that is 60 to 250. 15,000 square meters. So what we do is we provide 7,500 at one end. And if I go with 25 millimeter bars, I divide by 490 and I will get about 15 bars, 16, I'll provide 16. So 2, 4, 6. And if I want, I can provide one here, or otherwise I can provide two more. 2, 4, 6, 4, 6, 1, 16 bars. So 100 millimeter spacing. Then over 8.8 meters, I get 8 bars. 8 bars. On the other hand, you might consider concentrating some bars here, but whatever it is, it's okay because it's a 6 meter long wall. So this zone, whole zone will be in a high stress. Then what we do is, how are the remainder? These areas, Europe says 0.002, 0.002, but we use British code. So I think the national annexation of Sri Lanka says you need, so we might use 16 millimeter bars initially. This is a long wall, don't have a traffic transition. Then you can have 16 millimeter bars giving about 0.4%. And then close to center, you can even go up to 0.2%. Because Eurocode allow you to go up to 0.2%. So toward the center, we know nothing can go wrong because the center is not subjected to high stressors due to bending. So because of that reason, we can actually reduce it to 0.2. So the middle 2 meters, 0.2%. Then we use 0.4%. At the corners, we use whatever we have calculated. And that's how we can save steel. That's how we can save steel. Save steel that way. So here we use whatever we have calculated, that's a corner. Then we can put 0.4%, then 0.2%. And these areas we can put U bars. And in addition to that, in the most severely loaded locations, we'll make sure these are provided some confinement. And this confinement is particularly preferable to resist, to improve the earthquake resistance, because during an earthquake, these areas, cone areas will be subject to very high stresses, and especially at the ground level and the first floor level. So because of that reason, for about 3 floors, we provide all these links, and after that, we can relax, After that, we can relax. Whereas when you are coming here, you will have normal, because you don't need anything. Because if the reinforcement ratio is greater than 2%, you need this confinement. If it is less than 0.2%, you don't need special confinement, but what we do is we provide some mass. Otherwise, these cages will have too much sway, and you will find that it's really a problem. Because when you are doing construction, you like something rigid so that cover can be maintained easily. Because of that reason, in Sri Lanka, we generally don't use a diameter less than 12 millimeter in the vertical direction, unless the structure is small and you want to optimize it fully, and you are very much interested in reducing the cost to a bare minimum, and especially the reinforcement costs can be a significant factor. So that is the shear walls, how to design it, and I'll can go back to the note. So basically, you know how to design a shear wall now. And there's one question. Okay, cannot see. It's not a question. Now, one of the important things is, because we rely a lot on NOBH to provide stability, we like high loads on the wall, because if the loads are too small, the shear wall cannot behave as a column. It might have to behave as a flexural member, a beam, cantilever beam, which is not desirable, because when you put a lot of axial load on the column are stable, because bending moments can be easily suppressed when you have high axial. So in the same way, the shear walls also we like to have fairly high axial load. So make sure you have enough slabs supported by the shear wall. That's very important. And also provide the reinforcement as for the Society of Structural Engineers guide. Maybe little too stringent at some places because, but by following it, you can make a reasonable detail, and you cannot say you must follow this manual or that manual, but you can always follow the guidelines given in the Euro. So always use the guidelines given in the Euro code. And earlier we used some guidelines that were given for British code in a standard textbook. Use it, and now we are moving for Euro codes. So when you are moving for the Euro code, select the zones properly. Sri Lanka is not subjected to very high earthquakes, and this is India. This India is Sri Lanka, and some people are talking about some formation of some boundary here, but this is pure nonsense because this is in geological scale. You know, plates cannot be formed in our scale. Geological scale is something like 1 million years. So it's all pure nonsense, so don't think we'll have earthquakes. We will not have earthquakes. Sri Lanka is a country that will not have earthquakes, but nothing can be 100% safe. 99% safe, 1% not safe. We are structural engineers. We can't take even that 1% risk. So what we do is, we go for weak beam, strong column, so that always hinges will form here. Always hinges will form here. So because hinges will form here, what we need is a special detail for the beams for about 0.6 meters to 0.9 meters. If it's a small beam, 0.6 meters. If it's a large beam, for about 0.9 meters. You provide, my practice is, I provide 8 millimeter diameter high QT bars at 75 millimeter center to center. Few links. After that, you relax and you can provide the normal shear links. The reason is, if you draw the stress strain curve for, moment curvature curve for reinforced concrete, if you have a normal section, fails like this, you have some kind of confinement, it goes, a lot of confinement, it goes like that. That means when you have a lot of confinement, you get a fairly ductile type of behavior. So the reason is, if you, by providing a lot of reinforcement, we can create triaxial state, but the catch is, you can't get the triaxial state by using my steel. Always make sure the beam links are QT bars, and if you want to save money, go for 8 millimeter QT bars. Go for 8 millimeter QT bars, it's fine, no problem. You get good ductility, because if you use 6 millimeter my steel is has a strength of only 250 newtons per millimeter squared or megapascal. or megapascal. So because of that reason, my steel can easily yield, and that cannot provide confinement. What we call triaxial is axial, it acts here, its axis here. So in all directions, you are confining it. The moment you do that, concrete will become super strong, super strong. And how will you do that? We put links in the plastic hinge zone so that plastic hinges will always occur in beams, and beam concrete will never crack. Will never crack. But the good thing about Sri Lanka is the maximum magnitude that we can expect is only about 6. And because of that reason, 6 on Richter scale, and because of that reason, the chances of an earthquake lasting more than 20 seconds is very remote. But that is not the case in one country. This north, this south. South of what? America. And there's a fault going right round from top to bottom. This California, you get earthquakes. This Peru, all the South American countries, you get earthquakes. So the problem is in 1906, there was a great earthquake at San Francisco earthquake. So after this earthquake, the city fathers appointed a committee, and the committee gave a very damaging report. They said, we have built a city at the wrong place, because we have built a city on a huge fault, and this fault can become active one day or the other. And after 1906 earthquake, there was a huge fire, and then completely destroyed, almost completely destroyed San Francisco. More than 70% of the city was gutted by the fire. So what did they do? This America. They decided, we are not going to respect the professionals. We are going to rebuild the city because it was a great city before the earthquake, so we are going to have the same great city after the earthquake. Then they constructed, so San Francisco was the biggest city on the western coast. It remained like that. On the eastern coast, you have New York. Somewhere in the middle of the country, you get Chicago. So three cities competing each other with huge buildings. And then in 1991, then there's another huge earthquake. In California. It's called North Bridge earthquake. And all the people thought, okay, it's fine. All our structures have survived this huge earthquake. But still they thought, okay, let's investigate. So your I section. So you get plates welded, then there are beams. They found all their buildings okay, but what happened here? Severe damage to the earthquake, to the beams which are properly connected to the columns. and they found huge repair bills. They repair the buildings. Now, because of that reason, these IGIRDA, what they do is they go for a joint where they deliberately introduce a weak section. Deliberately introduce a weak section because this section has to carry only the shear force. They will not carry bending moment because they are simply support. That's still corrected. But the moment you have a weak connection, what will happen? In an earthquake, these places will form plastic hinges. Because plastic hinges form only at one section, all the sections stronger than that will remain elastic. So we create a controlled plastic hinge, not just arbitrary plastic hinge, a controlled plastic hinge at a location that we want, and that will assure that the hinges will always form at the weaker section and the remaining sections will remain elastic primarily under service conditions. So they have introduced this particular joint, and if you want to know more about these, please contact Dr. Kushan Vijayasundara of Peradeniya Engineering Department of Civil Engineering, Engineering Faculty. He is one of the best to talk about earthquakes and earthquake detailing, or else contact Dr. Pradeep of Open University. He also can talk a lot about earthquakes and earthquake detailing. And otherwise, you can contact Professor Sujeeva Lewangamage of Department of Civil Engineering. Again, he is a real master of the game. So we have three very bright people, and Dr. Pradeep is the student of Dr. Sujeeva. When Dr. Sujeeva used to teach at University of Rouen Engineering Faculty in 2007-8, he was there. And Dr. Pradeep did his final year project under supervision of Dr. Professor Sujeeva Lewangamage, and then he went into one of the European countries. Can't remember whether it's Italy or not Italy. He went to one of the European countries. I can't remember what country exactly. Not England, but one of the European countries. Not Italy either. Italy was Dr. Kushan Vijayasundara was in Italy, but Dr. Pradeep was in one of those countries. And he learned a lot. He's very good with designs. So because of that reason, I have invited him to come for to deliver some lectures, especially on composite systems. So you can see there are so many different details, steel structures. Always keep in mind, you can't do normal structures and expect earthquake resistance. To get earthquake resistance, you have special type of structures. And I'll make it a point, Engineer Kamala, we can actually get a guest lecture by Dr. Kushan Vijayasundara on these earthquake, special earthquake details for steel structures. Can you make a note of that?
Yeah, sure.
And also Dr. Pradeep agreed to talk on dynamics, structural dynamics. He's very good in structural dynamics. And also he agreed to talk on composite SAP systems.
No, Professor, I had a chat with Professor Dr. Laksiri. So we have to give a date for him. That's all.
Who, Dr.
Early March, we can do it.
Dr. Laksiri for
Pradeep.
Sorry?
Yes. Dr. Pradeep, Laksiri Pradeep.
He says Pradeep. I call him Pradeep. He's Tandarike Pradeep. He has a name called Laksiri also. Right. Okay. Yes. I didn't know that. Yeah. So please give him a chance.
Yeah.
Right? So he can do.
Okay. Thank you.
Then That is about steel structures. Concrete structures, my practice is I put more links to provide confinement, and those links will be high steel bars. So yes, and in addition to that, if you look at our type of detailing where we confine a lot of steel at the ends, you can give a lot of ductility to the shear wall. So even if you use any other method, make sure you have sufficient concentration of vertical reinforcement and the confined reinforcement especially in the lower floors of a shear wall, and that type of shear walls will have huge ductility. So even after so many cycles, you will still find that the shear wall is willing to take more loads. Right. So then we look at shear wall structures. There are so many different types, and when you understand it, it's very easy for you to visualize how the structure is going to be. Now here you can see in these shear walls, the length does not change, the thickness changes by the same amount. Then the system is statically determinate because the longer wall will not, this one will not transfer any extra loads to this one. So, but if you look at the deflection is given by, delta is given by wind load L to the power 4 divided by EI multiplied by K. K is a factor because it's not 1, it can be 5 or 384, something, it can be 1048 or 1082 or something. W L to the power 4. Why L to the power 4? Because W is a UDL, and because of that W L to the power 4, otherwise you cannot get units in meters. Right. Then it says divided by EI. So when I is higher, deflection is lower. Delta is equal to WL to the power 4 divided by EI multiplied by K. That means higher the I value, longer the wall, thicker the wall, lower the deflection. And the moment one member decides, I'm going to control the deflection, due to the presence of a rigid diaphragm at each floor level, all the other walls will have to behave as the big one says. And big one says, I'm going to control the deflection, and he will control the deflection. So, but if you look at the situation here, one wall does not transfer any load to the other wall through the slab. So because of that reason, we call it proportionate walls, proportionate walls. And also we say the load on the wall is a function of the I value. Longer the wall, it carries higher load. Shorter the wall, it carries less. And then you can see, I'll keep it for a moment so that you can go through it. Even when you are going through it later, still you can go through it. So the shear walls are very strong. They can carry externally induced moments and axial loads, and you can arrange the shear walls symmetrically so that no twisting will occur. No twisting will occur in the structure. No twisting will occur in the structure. Then what can you say about the loads acting on each wall? loads acting on each wall will depend on the stiffness. So you find EI divided by sigma EI. So if one wall is strong and it represents 70% of the stiffness, then 70% of the load will be carried by that wall, whereas the other wall will carry only 30%. And the deflection of the structure will be decided by the stronger wall. But what will happen if you do not arrange the shear walls symmetrically? The moment you do not arrange the shear walls symmetrically, the structure will move in the direction of wind, but because you are applying a load at the center of the building but resisting at a different location, what will happen to the structure? Structure will twist. Structure will twist. Because you can see the shear center of wall rigidity, so shear center is at one place and the load is acting at a different place. The moment that happens, there can be a torsional moment acting on the building, which is not desirable. So when we are doing designs, we try our best to avoid this twisting, but if you can't avoid, the walls are proportionate, then you can easily find the moment acting on each wall. Now for that, you have to find the location of twist, and then you can use this equation. You can use this equation and find the loads acting on each wall, and then when the moment you know the loads, you know the shear force and the bending moment. You know the shear force and the bending moment, right? And then you can even have more complicated situation when the shear walls are arranged in all directions. Before the computers were there, people did all these manual calculations. But we are very lucky. We have computers and good software like Midas or ETABS or SAP 2000. They are all good software. You can easily find the bending moment or the stresses on the shear walls. So no need to use any of these long equations, but I wanted to show you what happens. So when the twisting occurs, the twisting can be resisted not only by the walls in its own direction, but it can be that the walls are in the perpendicular direction. But fortunately, when you do all these things, when you put walls not symmetrical, structure can twist, all kinds of problems, the good thing is a computer model can be built. And then you have non-proportionate structures which are statically not determinate, especially at the places where here you can see this wall is reducing the length, this wall is not reducing the length. So at these locations, you will find there can be significant amount of redistribution of moments. So because of that reason, if you want, you can use them, but always keep in mind the floor levels where the shear wall arrangements are changing. You have to carefully deal with those things. Then, now we can see there's a symmetrical structure here, not going to twist, going to move only, and you like to see how it behaves. One option is create a three-dimensional model. The other option is convert it to a two-dimensional mathematical model. So your two-dimensional structure is not the actual structure, it's only a mathematical model. Anyway, keep in mind, the moment you start utilizing finite element based software, you are always doing approximate analysis. And because it's approximate analysis, so what we create is not the structure, it is a mathematical model of the real structure. Never ever say somebody, this is the architectural form and this is my mathematical model. And say the structure and mathematical models are the same. No need. No need. Here, this is a good example. We have a three-dimensional structure, but the mathematical model is 2D. So I'll move to the next one. Now, when you have shear walls aligned, we can go for something called coupled shear walls. There's a huge advantage of coupled shear walls. A later day, I'll show you with some calculations how to find the stresses in coupled shear walls. Then you can have a combination of shear walls and frames. And when you have a combination of shear walls and frames, what happens is the walls will not behave on the pure cantilever mode. Initially, at the bottom floors, it will be a cantilever, then the shear acting. Then the shear transfer will dominate, and at the top part of the building we say it's a shear mode, and shear mode, and the structure will come back from the cantilever mode. And I think I explained it, I can't remember. So basically, these are flexural or cantilever mode. These are shear mode. In shear mode, you get the maximum rotation at the bottom, whereas in the cantilever mode, it's fixed at the bottom. Then when you combine, you get a behavior like this. Very straightforward. And you'll ask, what are these rings? These rings are the floor diaphragms connecting the system. So the floor diaphragm is connecting the shear walls to the frame. So rigid diaphragm. So these members actually represent the rigid diaphragm. So what are the advantages of wall frame interaction? First one is lateral deformation is significantly reduced to about 30 to 40%. And bending in walls and wall assemblies will be less stringent because coupling action can transfer additional moments in the reverse direction and help to resist. Right, so you get the main advantage of wall frame interaction is because we have shear walls, columns can still be designed as brace columns. Columns can still be designed as brace columns. No need to consider that columns, the frame is stronger and shear wall is weaker. Because that reason, the shear wall can move more than the frame. So shear wall is not as strong as the frame or vice versa. But because shear walls are there, they can resist excessive deformations. It's suggested that columns can be designed as braced columns and giving a huge advantage because it says chances for buckling is low. So this is a tube, and there's a famous engineer called Khan, and he invented. So this is basically North India, Sri Lanka, Bangladesh. So we had good connection between these people. From our Trincock harbor, we used to, the people used to associate the people of North India. So the Prince Vijaya came from this area, and he brought their language called Bengali. So our language is a mix of Bengali and the original language we had here. So we have a huge language which is much broader than Bengali. So they say in Bengali about 50% of the language is about 50% of the language is from Sanskrit. But in our language, we have so many words. Because of that, we have only about 25 to 30% of the language as Sanskrit. And we all talk the same language. So in 1923, one engineer was born, and then he moved to USA as a Fulbright scholar. He never came back, but he created history. For coming up with so many different, very successful structural forms, which are all based on the behavior of bamboo. All based on the behavior of bamboo. All based on the behavior of bamboo. And his name is Fritz Kahn. And he's a very brilliant structural engineer, and he came up with all this. Ideas like the perforated tube. So it's called hull structures. And one of the biggest problems is you have to carry all the load to the bottom, then you find column is, because to enter the building without any hindrance, you need large openings at the ground level. To allow large openings at the ground level, what you do? Then, when people wanted stiffer buildings, they provided a core and outer periphery. One of the problems with this outer periphery is it can be subjected to shear lag. Shear lag means plane sections do not remain plane. One of the key assumptions of building theory is plane sections remain plane, but in this type of structures, due to flexibility, plane sections will not remain plane. And when that happens, we call shear lag effect. Shear lag effect occurs, then you will find the highest loads are carried only at the corners, whereas when it comes to the middle of the structure, very little load is carried because of shear lag effect. then comes the bundle tube concept, bundle tube. So it's like he got this idea from bamboos, looking at bamboos. And he actually died at a young age of 53. And he came up with this bamboo. And this bamboo is used in Sears Tower. And you can type Sears Tower, USA. Then it will say it's an outdated name. They change the ownership, so it becomes another name. Then those guys again sold the property. Now it's a completely different name. So the advantage of bundle tube is to understand that, just consider the bundle of bamboo with one bamboo. One bamboo is good, but when it becomes slender, it needs support. And support can be given by putting all the tubes together, not either 4 tubes or 9 tubes. You put them together and then make the structure super strong. Even though we consider it super strong, even with this type of all the measures, still Sears Tower can behave in an with excessive deflections on windy days. Then people found that it's possible to connect the middle part and the outer by using huge beams, and the depth of the beam can be as large as 3 meters. Huge beams. In Altea, there's an outrigger. There's something closer to outrigger, and that is 2 floors. That means 6 meters height. Sometimes you find even the deep beams connecting the facade and the facade and the score, to make it more effective, you put a truss in the other direction. So the moment you put a truss in the other direction, what will happen? The truss will ensure that all the columns are loaded to a reasonable degree. So the structure will have even desirable behavior. This is not a very good type of structure. It's only like, floors are hanging from above, which I don't like very much. And then you can get hybrid structures where you have outriggers, you have cores, you have the bundle tubes, everything. So uses of tan and less. And this is the same story here. Just you can get very complicated structures these days. Architects come up with utterly complicated structures. And then the solution comes with diagonal frames, and they are called diagrids. So what you see in Altea is a diagrid. The inclined tower, what you see is a diagrid. It's a diagonal grid, and using diagrids you can create very complicated structures. Then I briefly touch on floors. There's a huge problem with floors, because we say there's a beam, In a slab, the depth of the neutral axis will be about 0.1 d, and here 0.1 d. What happens to the remaining part of concrete? What happens to the remaining part of concrete? We can say that's cracked. So it's cracked. And to control the crack widths, we provide minimum reinforcement. And then the crack here. But these crack concrete also would have a weight, because they all have weight. What will happen? What happens is you add lot of weight as self weight. So if you want to optimize, get rid of all this extra concrete. The moment you get rid of concrete, the steel needed to control cracking can go down drastically. So here we get rid of all these different things. And how do we get rid of all these things? You can precast the beams. A thin slab. Have a thin slab. And make sure there are links, another 50 millimeter thin, and these can. Just one moment. Oh, sorry, I have done a blunder. So basically, when you have a slab, there are beams, slab, but only the depth of the neutral axis will be about 0.1 d or 0.15 d. All the concrete, remaining concrete is cracked, and cracked concrete will add to the weight of the structure, without doing much. But to control the crack widths, we have to provide minimum reinforcement. Minimum reinforcement. We have extra concrete. And these days, 1 meter cube of concrete is 23,000 rupees. 1 ton of steel can go up to about 370,000 rupees. And is it worth putting all these additional steel and concrete? Answer is no. So we can think of simply beam slab systems where beams and steps, bottom steps can be precast, and precast to be sufficiently lightweight. And what we do after that is we'll put them together, put some reinforcement, connect everything, and make a beam slab system. And it's the same thing with steel, use of steel for composite construction, where this thickness can be 60. Dr. Pradeep is an expert on this. He designs this type of structures often and bring about huge savings to the clients. So we'll ask him to explain the design aspects of composite subsystems as well, because that is going to be the future. Because concrete is very expensive, steel is very expensive. If something is very expensive, find a cheaper alternative. So there are so many different subsystems. And then we can also have restress concrete subsystems. These restress concrete subsystems are very popular, where in countries where the labor cost is very high, and they use it to minimize the effort at the site. And I would say these also can minimize the effort at the site. Whereas the dormer slabs, huge amount of work at the site. So the future is going for new systems, thinking outside the box, and developing PT-based new systems and so on. So instead of using reinforced concrete for this slab, you can try PT. So these are precast slab. The moment you use PT, you'll find that the sections can be made thin. The sections can be made thin. So you can see there are so many different aspects, different systems that we can use to resist lateral loads. And one of the key parameters for this lateral load resistance is the horizontal rigidity offered by the slabs. We call them rigid diaphragms. And because we are using concrete, we can always claim that we are rigid and we are having rigid diaphragms. Whatever the systems I have shown here, you use it, no problem. But if you want to use this system, it's very expensive. When you have a 30-40-story building, so you can easily save 20-25%. So always think we have PT, pre-stressed concrete, we have reinforced concrete, and out we have precast construction methods, and out of these, the weakest or the worst is normal beam flat construction. It's very expensive. So it will be much cheaper to go for these systems because you need only very little steel. You need only very little steel here. Just to keep them tight, because if you look at this slab, 300 millimeters, you have 50 millimeter thickness, and you'll have a 10 millimeter bar. These are 6 millimeter, these are 10 millimeter bars. So the 10 millimeter bar will ensure no failure. And we use 6 millimeter bars at the corners or 8 millimeter bars at the corners, knowing very well we are going to get another 8 millimeter bar. And what we do is when you're casting, we cast with a shape like this. And we'll have a key. So when you pour concrete, you'll have proper connection. So with that, I can say that most of the structural form related things have been discussed, and in chat channel we have advanced finite. Yes, some says let's see how to use finite element software. I'm going to do it, but my theory is finite element is a mathematical model. Before doing any mathematical model, understand the behavior so that you can predict the answers before you do the finite element. And then you would say, I'm doing finite element because I like to have a big report, big design report. Otherwise, I have enough knowledge to do manual calculations and design. So don't think finite element is a big deal. It's nothing. Don't consider it as any important. It's not important. Once you know the theory, finite element becomes nothing. But on the other hand, use finite element without knowing the theories, without knowing the how to do modeling, then whatever, the moment you come across something new, you're on quicksand. You don't know what to do. Then you start struggling. But if you do the theory part first, then it's very easy. What is the allowable deviation in setting out? 0. 20-story building. You don't have allowance. Get it right. There's no way you can have errors in buildings. So if they will allow anything to go wrong, make it as perfect as possible. So better to have interactive platform for advanced finite element. Yes, we will have. We certainly teach you. But there are so many very good finite element modelers in this country. And if you are in a hurry, just talk to one of them. And also go through internet. I have a YouTube channel called Advanced Computer Modeling of Structures, I think. But you don't have to do anything. Just go to YouTube and type my name, MTR Jaisingha. You can download many YouTube videos where the finite element modeling is taught, and learn it yourself. Shear wall, the minimum percentage of steel in the vertical direction is 0.2%, horizontally 0.1%. That is the Eurocode. But I don't like it. I like, as I said, I like concentration reinforcement, then 0.4% vertically, then 0.2%. Eurocode, the horizontal requirement is 0.25, so I might stay a little lower because Eurocode allows 0.02%. And if the lateral load taken by the shear wall is less than a certain limit, there's nothing like that. If you have a shear wall, always its second motor area will be much larger than the columns. So because of that reason, the deflection will be totally controlled by the shear wall. So the wall frame is restrained from movements. So there's absolutely no chance for columns to buckle unless you have designed so thin very small columns. We don't do it. So in high-rise building, the columns can never buckle. So will precast concrete slab provide adequate diaphragm? Yes, because we are having about 60 millimeter thick concrete, and there will be so many additional steels going here and there with 6 millimeter bars, so that type of very lightweight steel. So because of all these things, the moment you use composite slabs or precast slabs, the system that I am introducing, absolutely no way, no problem, the buildings can last. Well, because diaphragm action will be active all the time. Slabs, I don't analyze. I'll use, how do you analyze slabs? I don't analyze. Because BS 8110 gives a very good table. So just use that table and design a slab. I mean, even when you are doing the design for Europe, or still you can design a slab for British code. Why? Slab is the simplest possible element that you can ever use. So because of that reason, we optimize slabs. And so once you analyze the slabs to beam slab systems, then you don't have to, you can just do your manual calculations. So that's all the question. So don't have any fear. Yes.
Sir, so when we are constructing a precast or pre-stressed for the slab, pre-stressed concrete for the slab, that means the slab won't be a single unit, no, sir. It has several parts, no, sir. So in that case,
these are two. Just see. Okay. We don't cast it like this. We do something special. We use some. And we put reinforcement to corrective. Even 6 minute wire is enough. The moment you connect all these things, they become so rigid because there will be a bond between all these, and even when you are fixing here, you will put grout. So all this will become one unit, and even if any unit starts to disintegrate, no problem, because all these are now acting together. You can see, we'll have additional things. We are not going to rely on the board. We'll never ever rely on the board. What's the answer? So if you have anything like 60 millimeter or more screed, it can hold everything together.
Sir, if we are using, sir, precast units, sir, do we require to do this discontinuous that means slab cohesion we have to consider as a discontinuous, so we can consider continuous?
No. These when you are using all these precast systems, they are one-way slabs. They are one-way slabs. You have two beams. We put something, and you can consider them as one-way slabs. But if you want, you can design it in such a way that you will give a continuity. You will give a continuity. So basically,
thank you, sir.
You have the beam, you have the slab, you have this. I'm going to review this. So you will make it continuous. So in the slab, you provide straight reinforcement, so that in the in-situ section, in-situ cast part, there will be enough reinforcement strategically placed so that all these beams will not be individual, they are all linked. These beams are, although they look independent, they will become dependent because we put this type of things and put quarter-inch steel here and there, but don't overdo it, but just to put something. So the moment you do completing, everything will be that. They will all become one unit. Have I answered all the questions?
Right.
And you can download on the internet about all these different precast systems and just go through those papers. Last time also I would have told you, MTR Jessica DEF, you can get useful papers. So keep in mind, knowledge is wealth. Skills may not be wealth. So for example, if you are capable of designing and repeating the same slab, same type of beams over and over again.
Excuse me, sir.
you will have the skill, but the knowledge, not the knowledge. Knowledge is, reading. Knowledge is gained by reading. So you have to do your own reading. For that, it is very easy. Internet is there. You can download so many things on internet, and you can do self-learning to improve yourself. So when you have this kind of support, on one side you have real teaching, on the other side you have your own knowledge gathering. So after about 4-5 years, you will become a superb engineer who can always look at problems in a logical manner. You wanted to ask us a question?
Excuse me, sir.
Yeah.
Hello.
Yeah, sir. Are there any national annexes so that manuals to follow against that earthquake loading, designed for earthquake loading?
No, use whatever the British, whatever the things that British have done. And so basically, if you are using Eurocode, you want to do anything. Whenever you don't see a national annexure, just use the UK national annexure. So, Engineer Kamala, what shall we do?
Yeah. Yeah, actually now it's almost 8:30, so there are several questions. So shall we take those questions in the first few minutes in the next lecture?
That's okay, that's okay. I can take about 1 or 2 questions.
Yeah, if you are okay, I can, shall I read it?
Yeah, okay, no problem.
What is the allowable deviation in setting out in a, say, 20-story building?
I mean, I answered it. I said, don't talk about allowances. There's no allowance. You must get it right. If something goes wrong, we can see whether it's within the allowance. But any allowance is detrimental. Don't talk about the allowances in all.
So
I have actually answered the questions in the chat box, unless you have new ones.
Yeah. In the same question, is asking how are we dealing with this issue at design stage?
No, design stage, no allowance, nothing. You just do it. But when you are designing a shear wall, always you consider the vertical loads will act at an eccentricity of going up to 20 millimeters.
Yeah, okay. What is the minimum percentage of steel for a shear wall?
I answered that point to you. I told
okay. Yeah, okay, yeah. So it would be better to have, I think this one you address, but not as a question. Yes. Better to have an interactive platform for advanced finite elements.
Yeah, I told that they can actually go to the internet and get download these videos, and they can learn a lot. Those videos are very good, and they cover the detail, the modeling part.
What is the minimum percentage of steel for a shear wall? The same question, I think. Yeah,
same question. I answered.
What is the allowable deviation in setting out in a 20-story building? How are we?
That also we answered. Yes.
Same answer. Yeah, I couldn't read. If the line taken by the shear wall is less than certain limit, does the columns need?
No, there's nothing limit. There's no limit, because I can't understand how that person gets that question. Somebody would have given completely wrong information. You cannot have percentages.
I think it's 8:30, so I think
we will wind up.
It's like same. Okay, shall we wind up?
Yes, we'll wind up.
Yeah. Okay, sir. Professor, it's a big thank to you. I will call Engineer Padma Renuka Gamage to deliver her vote of thanks. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, madam. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Yes, go ahead.
Good evening to everyone. It is such an honor for me to get this opportunity to thank you all on behalf of Civil Engineering Sectional Committee. Today's lecture was structural form of tall buildings and continuation from last week. I take this opportunity to thank you, express thanks. I take this opportunity to express our sincere thanks to you, Professor Nisanjay Singha, for your sharing valuable experience, knowledge, and opinion. Dear sir, we gathered from lot from your lecture, and we refreshed our knowledge too. Thank you very much, sir, for spending your valuable time with us, even with your busy schedule. Secondly, my special thanks goes to Engineer Kamala Gunawardana, member of Civil Engineering Sectional Committee and Chairperson of Knowledge Sharing Subcommittee, for getting webinar arrangement. I also thanks Engineer Manjula, Secretary of Civil Engineering Sectional Committee, and the committee member of Knowledge Sharing Subcommittee for your support. I must mention my deep sense of appreciation, ISL Secretariat, especially Mr. Chamila, Mr. Chamara, and Ms. Gayatri for supporting and hosting and other arrangements. Dear participants, thank you very much for your active participation. Without you, we can't get this event success. And hope you will continue to join this lecture series on every Tuesdays. Thank you very much, Professor. Your very good presentation, very detailed presentation. Thank you very much, Professor. And
Thank you very much. Yeah, thank you.
Welcome, sir. Have a wonderful evening to you all. Thank you very much. Good night, sir. Good night, all. Thank you.
Thank you.